So, hello everybody and welcome. And I am with the lovely Natalie Bruins, who is founder of Visibly Rocks, all-round marketing superstar, and now CMO of a brand new digital bank. Hello. Good
Hi.
to see
you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. So tell me more, because if I know anybody out of all of my network who's seen the changes that have affected B2Bs over the last decade, I mean, you have worked agency side, client side, software sellers, B2B, you've really seen the lot, and you've seen how it's all affected them and how they've often been quite slow to change, right?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't going to talk about that, but slow to change is such a good phrase because, we've absolutely felt that with COVID-19, that particularly in the retail space where, I've spent a lot of my life and fintech, businesses that have not gone through this digital transformation have had to go through it very, very quickly, in a matter of 3 or 4 months. Some of them in a couple of days, have had to transform their business models to kind of fit in and survive, really. So it's been very interesting, particularly from a consumer behavior perspective. And there's been some very interesting changes. So yeah, thanks for having me today.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. Yeah, we're sharing loads of research on Social Media Genius and loads of articles coming out at the moment about people really, really pressuring brands to change and do better. And I must say, it's a change we've noticed since we started the agency 11 years ago. But honestly, it just, as you say, seems to have accelerated. It seems to have gone on steroids the last 6 months, don't you think?
I mean, it's just a couple of years ago where you talk to both B2B and B2C businesses, and they've been like, oh, how do you quantify social media? How do you turn a value to that? And I don't think any business today can argue about the importance of digital in their business as part of their growth strategy, part of their brand strategy, customer retention strategy. So yeah, there's two really interesting areas that I think we can talk about now in terms of influencer marketing. So influencer marketing is undergoing a huge amount of change. Two areas. The first has been the surge in online traffic for people to both do shopping and social media. People have really gone online. A 48% uptick. In older generation, I say older, which is including me, but Generation X and baby boomers, people that are not used to or familiar or readily using digital technologies to shop or chat to their cousins or their family. It's been a huge surge, and it sounds great, but actually from a brand's perspective, it's very challenging. There's been a huge decrease in budgets, amount of advertising revenue, and there's a massive change in content. So it's a challenging time. If you think of brands that are really good at doing content online, fashion brands or food brands, and all of a sudden the conversation has changed. A lot of those brands are scratching their heads and thinking like, oh, what do we talk about? How do we position our brand in the middle of this pandemic? What is the conversations we need to be having? So they're kind of shifting gears very quickly. And I love the example of Joe Wicks, because Joe Wicks, within a matter of, days, he'd launched this platform, for families to come and do fitness time, not just kids, but, and everybody was doing this 9 o'clock, and, it was almost like a talking point, and, people.
He became a thing, didn't he? With his own hashtags and everything. I mean, brilliant, really, really clever.
Just such a clever example of, switching his mindset and like, okay, well, I'm a fitness star, this is brilliant, and I'm going to use social. I'm going to go online.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen quite a bit of it. I wrote an article a couple of weeks back about pivoting in the pandemic, and one of them was looking at, have you seen that bring a llama to your meeting?
Oh, love it.
Goat, llama, cow, sheep, whatever, really. Sweet Farm will supply whoever is on for it that day. Apparently they have moments where they really don't want to be a rock star at a meeting that day. I love it. I just need to book that for a meeting one of these days. And what's the other? There was a couple of others. We've been to Creation Theatre a couple of times, who have embraced Zoom and do their whole productions through Zoom. And we thought The Tempest was good, which was their first attempt. But honestly, we watched the second one, The Time Traveller, and it was just brilliant. They really ramped up another level. The interaction using Zoom, I mean, it was live theatre. It was brilliant. And then I've just booked Cooking with Nonna in Italy. So it'll be live pasta making with an authentic Italian nonna. And I'm looking forward to lots of flour flying everywhere. And apparently they just don't listen, and they don't really, because most of them are in their 80s. They don't really get that everybody can hear everything. So it's going to be a life experience, I think. And you've got to admire it. I mean, these brands are just pivoting and saying, right, well, we haven't got it coming in from here. Let's do this. And yet other brands seem to be very slow, and I'm still seeing scheduled posts going out, and, you know, there's quite a lot of lip service to the change. I mean, some of the webinars with some of the B2Bs have been dire, absolutely dire.
I think, you know, Claire, it's down to people, right? So I'll tell you a secret. I'm business up front, you know, Zoom up front. Below, I'm in my jammy pants. Normal. And I think the reason I say that is because this is about people. It's about authenticity. And never has it been more true for social media, you know, or digital, let's just call it digital. It's never been more true. And the brands that are really being successful are the ones that are really thinking about their customers and pivoting where they have to help, support, empathize, you know, and be with those customers in the moment. The brands that are shooting out their, you know, scheduled posts and not resonating, they're becoming more irrelevant. They're almost annoying.
Just ignore them, don't they? Because they are annoying, and they don't realize, they think they've got a captive audience because they're still set in that pre-social media mindset, really, of, you know, that's our audience. But they haven't, because people will mute them, they will ignore them, they unfollow them. And once you become invisible, doesn't matter how much you spend on advertising, you won't get it back, because people just turn off advertising.
Yeah, and you know, that's the second trend that we're seeing in influencer marketing is, and this is pre-COVID, brands are spending less time on big influencers and focusing on thousands and millions of likes, and actually they're targeting smaller communities and groups that are niche and specific to what it is they're selling or what their message is about. And they're growing their audience through those more targeted groups. You know, so the days of having big celebrities touting, you know, your latest lip brand, or I think we'll see that really slow down.
Yeah, I think so too. I think influencer marketing is becoming more professional as well, and we're seeing more experts in their field sharing their knowledge in really interesting spaces, like, I don't know, clean energy and water, where people know their stuff, and you know, they're no rock star, but they know their stuff, and so people listen because that's what they're looking for. Whether, you know, our clients are wide ranging, and we've got people who are selling widgets and gadgets for construction, as well as people who are acting with clean power, and all of them have got expertise which people are looking for, and I think that is going to be a way forward.
Well, you know, the rise in the conscious consumption, I think, is a big topic. Yeah. As consumers, we've shifted our behaviors. So we've gone, you know, pre-pandemic, we were shopping based on quality, 48% of us, price, 47%, and then brand. So quality, price, and brand. And now our shopping has changed and we're focused on availability, price, and quality. So that shift in how we're shopping, we're thinking about, using independence, buying local. We're mindful of what we're buying. So we're focusing on essential goods. We want to limit food waste. We're far more conscious. We're looking at sustainable options. All these things that probably would have taken us a lot longer to do and longer to reach this point. Just in the way digital transformations happened over a couple of months, I think the behavior from the conscious consumption has sped up incredibly, which I think is so exciting.
I love it. Absolutely love it. And I know that we've absolutely walked that line. I mean, we did before. And it's heartening to see everybody else. Well, some people were walking alongside us, but, heartening to see so many other people doing the same.
Yeah.
And I mean, we published an article some months ago just saying, how to support your local businesses. I know that you've been so involved with helping local businesses like the Newbury with their pivoting from the distillery. Hang on, what's the gin's name? Give them a shout.
137 Gin.
Yeah, that's it. Who, their story is incredible, isn't it? From a gin distillery in a local pub to making hand sanitizer. Love it.
Yeah, and I think that's where the successes will lie. There's so many debates going on now about will this change in behaviour stick? Analysts are predicting that our behaviour will stay relatively the same. And I think all the businesses local to Newbury will remember Pete. They're going to remember the fact that, he had a very successful pub that's now shut for months, struggling. And actually he was like, well, what can I do to help? And he put his hands up, and started producing sanitizer, which he's still today giving away for free. And, helping all the local different services that are essential to us.
Yeah.
I think people will remember that.
Well, it inspired us to buy his gin.
Yeah.
As a birthday present, we got one of his bottles of gin, and we've been looking at his Sunday lunches and just trying to spend money with them as much as we can personally. And I know other people are thinking the same. So he's generated an awful lot of goodwill.
Yeah.
Because of what he's done.
And I think, I know the series about social goodness, but what that represents right there is the social conscience.
Yeah.
About how we're buying and shopping, and where we're spending our dollars. Not dollars. Where we
well, our dollars and our sterling and our euros, depending on where you're looking at.
But I think there's some great examples locally, and the second the third really interesting thing, Claire, is businesses looking at the context of how they can use digital marketing to pivot. I mean, I've worked with a local dentist, which is totally out of my usual place. Some of my volunteering work, I got involved with a local dentist who I'd spoken to them months ago and said, you need to think about upping your game online. Let's have a look at your website. And they were like, we don't need it. We're so busy all the time. And I was like, yeah, fair enough. Their books were full. But then come March time, they had to pivot their business really, really quickly, and they have. And so many businesses, I think, before were thinking, yeah, the good old-fashioned, kind of gentlemanly approach and the community approach, and is okay. I don't think it is anymore. You've really got to be quite smart with the way that you are telling your brand story and being there for your customers. And even more importantly is, if you look at, again, the consumer behavior, talking about that 48% uptick in the older generation, the wiser of us, moving to the digital space is a huge thing, not only from a retail perspective, from a personal perspective, from a banking perspective.
So if you had to put forward 1-2 tips for brands trying to get through COVID and come out of it intact the other side and hopefully thriving, whatever brings and however long it takes us to find a new stability. What would you say?
Put the customer first. You know, no matter if you're in a hairdresser or a bank, or a supermarket, or I don't know, a Joe Wicks fitness guru, you've got to think about who your customer is, and create your content or your story around that. You know, there's an awful story about a gin company in Bristol who, you may have seen it, put out this awful tweet with riots. Do you remember?
Yeah, I did. God, made me cringe.
But what really happened there is they probably had someone posting, you know, as kind of their job, not their passion. It was just kind of a tick box exercise, not thinking about how that content will resonate with the audience. You know, who drinks gin? What do they aspire to? You know, what is their political background? Where do they shop? What do they look? What's this persona of this person who's going to buy our product? And without that, I don't know how you can put together a credible social strategy. You know, how do you put out credible content that's relevant and resonates with the audience? Well, you're not going to.
And that's when, that's when it really fails. And that is like the absolute opposite of social media genius, isn't it? Because it was tone deaf. It was badly conceived. It was going back to an article that my partner Helen wrote, I don't know, 8-10 years ago, about don't give it to the intern, don't give it to the office junior, because you know this is your brand voice. Social media is your brand voice, and nothing's changed for some brands. They still devalue it and think that, you know, anything will do, really. And it's out there, it's public domain, and people see it and respond one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking to a few customers lately about their brand guidelines. You know, 5-10 years ago, your brand guidelines were very much like, oh, the colouring in department. You know, the logo looked like this.
Crayons, yes.
Logos at this height and don't stretch it. And I mean, that's nothing. You know, your brand guidelines is your tone of voice. You know, the reciprocity to your customers. You know, your brand persona, your audience, you know, kind of collection of what they look like, what they care about, your brand values, your brand mission. You know, that whole piece is so important as any brand. And a brilliant example, which I know you loved a couple of weeks ago, was, you know, those two tea brands who, you know, they were so confident about their tone of voice and their audience that they were able to just knock out that really clever, really quick campaign. What probably wasn't a campaign, it was accidental. They're just chatting in their language. And another brand that does it really well is Greg's. You know, they know their customer, they know their cheeky tone, and they just get it right every time.
Yeah. It reminded me of Greg's, you know, at the beginning of last year, about vegan sausage roll. And they were getting all this love on the one side from the people who'd petitioned them. There had been this huge petition from vegans saying, look, we love your sausage rolls. Can you make a vegan version, please? And they had responded to the customer. And then on the other side, you've got the squad led at the time by Piers Morgan, who were saying this is irrelevant, and, you know, and nobody asked for this, which they was wrong, actually, because they had asked for it. And the way they dealt with that, so cool and calm. Oh, hi, Piers, we've been expecting you. I think that was just genius, social media genius.
I think definitely there's going to be the blur between, you know, this kind of business and pleasure. You know, like I told you about my jammy pants. Sorry, in Britain, trousers, isn't it? But bottoms. There's definitely a blur between, you know, our social personal lives and our business lives. And I've definitely seen it on all the Zoom calls I've been doing, all the, you know, all the groups that I'm involved in. You know, it's become more personal, it's become more engaging. You know, I've seen my colleagues, you know, interact with their children as they're trying to like do a Zoom call and they're teaching at the same time, and the dogs. And I love it. You know, I love that. I don't want that to change. I don't want to go to the office and wear a suit and, you know, prime the makeup every day and, you know, spend, I don't know, 4 hours a day on a train. I think people aren't going to want that. You know,
I think most people feel the same. If they can work from home, I hope people will. I mean, you know, we've done it since we started 11 years ago, and
Mm.
We've got 3 people in France and we absolutely love it. And it's just so flexible. And I love that whole relaxed blurring, as you say. It's authentic, transparent.
Yeah.
And I like that. I dislike surface. And I think most consumers are actually getting to that point where they can spot
Yeah.
falseness and paying lip service and being glib, just, you know, badging it, as they call it in the PR industry, particularly badging it. And, you know, it's just not good. It's absolutely the opposite of social media genius in my eye. It's just pandering,
Yeah.
ticking boxes. I don't like it. And I think most consumers don't like it. And I think brands have to recognize that. And if they're going to survive and thrive, I think, as you say, it's got to always come back down to what the consumer wants.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're always right. I mean, if you haven't got an audience, then you haven't got a business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, it is all down to your customer. You know, that's how all the big successful businesses have grown. You know, look, I mean, there's so many examples. Gymshark, perfect example. You know, passion of the brand, understanding your audience.
Mm.
Authentic, being relevant, you know, Joe Wicks, relevance.
Yeah, it's relevancy as well, isn't it? And empathy, knowing what your customers are going through, even if you don't understand it, you know, just being aware of it and saying, I get it, or I'm trying to get it. Like, you know, with the Black Lives Matter stuff, it's difficult to understand, but the people who are actually winning on the brand front are the people who are saying, we get it, or we're trying to get it, help us get it, and we'll make those changes.
Yeah.
People who are being, as I've seen frequently, the people where they're getting kickback are the ones who are just badging it. Yeah. And they don't really mean it. They're just like ticking boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So lovely to talk to you, my darling.
Thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you for coming on. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, it's been grand.
Yeah.
Talk soon.
Talk
Bye-bye.
Bye.